Chris and Evola from ASEX, our auditors. First item on the agenda is the evacuation procedure. So on hearing the evacuate signal, please carry out the following. Exit the building by your nearest safest exit. All visitors report to assembly point G. All staff report to their designated assembly point on Woolpack Way car park. And do not leave the assembly point for any reason until told to do so by the incident controller or the fire brigade officer.
And the fire alarm went off today, so we're all up to date with what to do.
Happy days.
It wasn't a test, I think. Somebody making tours in the police room. So we're well practiced.
The next item is apologies for absence, members away on official council business. I think everybody's there, aren't you? Apologies. Item number 3, disclosable pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests.
Some apologies in front of you, just one.
Oh, absolutely. Apologies, yes, apologies for the apologies. Yeah, so there was apologies from Councillor Gosling and apologies substituting his Councillor Owen Phillips. So welcome, Owen. Apologies about that. Should have read the thing, yeah. Okay. Item number 4 is public participation.
No questions.
Okay. Item number 5 is the minutes of the Executive Board held on the 25th of November last year. I'll move them from the chair then. Seconded. Thank you, Councillor Waffles. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. I should have said we're going to move item number 8 to item number 7. All will become apparent. Clearly, the item number 8 on the agenda was for the auditors to comment on draft financial statements. Which appears was after. So it makes a lot more sense, does it not, to have our draft financial statements item first and then the auditors to comment. Okay. But item number 6 is the annual governance statement for 23-24. And the council produces these our annual governance statement every year, which sets out the arrangements that they have been put in place for the governance of the council's operations, including how it deals with risk. This is in addition to the controls reported to members throughout the year, such as internal audits and progress against corporate strategies. Draft statement for 2023-24 is appended to this report for consideration by this board. It also forms part of the statement of accounts, item 8 on this agenda. Anybody got any comments? Questions? Okay. Councillor Ricker.
It was a question rather than a comment, but reading this just made me think of the peer review. I just wondered if there was an update on when we would get the action plan.
Through you, Chair. So, given the uncertainty on the announcements of local government reform, we didn't put it on this agenda because if we were in the first wave of local government reorganisation, our action plan would be slightly different. But now we're not. The intention is to take it to executive board in March.
Thank you very much. There's no more questions or queries. I'll move back from the chair then. Seconded by Councillor Simmons. Thank you. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. So item number 8 is the draft financial statements for 2023-24. The 2023-24 financial statements have been finished and published, but have not yet been considered by members due to the problems with the national audit backlog, as set out in the report. The report sets out the actual final position for both the general fund and housing revenue account compared with the revised forecasts. Anybody got any questions? That's scary. You're looking at us afternoon.
Is he indicating to speak? It's me.
Councillor Simpson.
Thank you. I can see from the report that the net pension liability increased by, I can't remember, £2.5 or £1.5 million in the year in question. What is the full net pension liability? I'm not an accountant, and I couldn't find it.
I don't know off the top of my head, and I'm looking at.
Through your chair, we've got in the overall part, we've got £98 million worth of assets and 88,000 of liabilities at the moment. So the fund is in surplus.
For the pension fund,
For
across the whole.
Warwickshire.
I think it says in the report that there's a figure quoted for the weighting changes, the percent increase on pay. So
Yes.
it was in balance, if you or in surplus in 23-24. Is it your view that it is still in surplus, or will that change?
I'm not sure on that one. We're waiting for the figures in effect to come out later at the end of March. That will give us an idea of whether it's still in surplus or whether it's gone back into a deficit.
Okay. I mean, at this point last year, Chairman, we were in a very significant hole. If we've gone from a significant hole to about 10 million quid in credit, I'd like to understand how that happened, because I don't think there's much else in the economy where people have achieved that rapid turnaround. I'm clearly delighted. But a little sceptical.
Yeah, I mean,
It's about a 20 million variance, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, clearly with the pension fund, it's all invested, so we'd have to have a look at the detailed report, but interest rates in last year were quite high, and that's the money that's invested, so I would imagine that's how we've sort of gone into a surplus position, but we'd have to have a look at the detail to give you a proper answer on that.
I'd appreciate it, Chairman. I get the point that cash has been good over the last 12 months. And gilts have been derisory, and the stock market has not been particularly good. So to have got that rate of turnover, I think we'd have had to have about 20% of our assets in cash.
Councillor Simmons.
Thank you, Chair. Just through you, the local government pension funds, the inflationary factors, obviously we had 10% inflation within the last 18 months. And when we had the actuarial valuation, the inflation away a lot of the level of the liability, as well as the high interest rates on your investment. So it's both sides of that. And a lot of the revaluations took that into account. So most local government pension funds and the different elements of that saw positive benefits to their balance sheet over the last 12 months because of the way that it fell, the 3-year actuarial revaluation and therefore your inputs as well. So it's one of the benefits of inflation.
Okay, thank you. So Alison and Nigel will circulate to members of the board the detail. Are there any other comments, queries, questions?
Sorry, just one small point relating to what's euphemistically called in here heritage assets. Is that a real valuation or was it just been indexed up from that? Because it comes from about 800,000 to 1.1 million.
Through you, Chair, it's been indexed, so it's not a physical valuation.
I'd be quite interested to simplistically weigh it and get the spot price of gold and see if it's actually worth that. Collectively.
Okay. Okay, well, I don't see anybody else indicating, so I'll move that from the chair, seconded by councillor Simmons. All those in favour? And that is unanimous. Thank you. So we'll now move on to item 8, which is the external auditors completion report for those charged with governance 2023-24. So members will be aware from previous reports of the problems within the audit system for local government and the delays in producing various reports on the council's accounts. Our new auditors, as X, have considered the 2023-24 financial statements in the light of the arrangements the government has put in place to deal with the national audit backlogs. So Ernst Young disclaimed the 2021-22 and the 2022-23 accounts as presented at the November meeting, and ASETS have disclaimed the 2023-24 accounts, and their report has been circulated to members. So, as mentioned before, I'm pleased to welcome Chris Brown and Zola Gigula from ASETS. So I'd like to invite them to present their report to us. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so that was helpful context setting. Remember the last meeting, the previous auditors disclaimed their opinions for the last 2 years. The challenge we've then had is to recover the missing assurance from those 2 years, in addition to completing an audit for 23-24. We have to do that now by the government's new backstop date, which for 23-24 is 28th of February 2025, so the end of this month, which hasn't given us enough time. And I have to say, across the sector, there's not enough capacity in the audit profession to recover that assurance within that time frame anyway, even if we had more time. There's just not the resource available. So that means we have to disclaim the opinion for 23-24. Now, what's important is that we work with Alison and Nigel to develop a recovery plan for getting back to unmodified opinions as soon as we can. And that will be part of our audit for 24-25. One of the key challenges or tasks for this current year that we're in right now. In terms of this report for 2024, we prioritised as part of the audit work the kinds of testing that will be useful for us in future years, that we can carry forward into future years' audits. So the work that will hopefully help us to build back that assurance. We raised one significant weakness in the report, which is consistent with EY's report from the prior years, which relates to the timely completion and publication of the financial statements. There's a very full management response to that point in the report, which is really about addressing resource. I think deficiencies, probably there's just not been enough resource in the finance team to allow that work to happen by the deadline. So that we're pleased to see that response. And we've raised a few other control weaknesses in the report, which again are consistent with the issues that EY and prior predecessor auditors raised around IT controls and cyber security risks. And as I say, they're consistent with the prior year auditors. So there's nothing really very surprising in our report, I think. But it is a pretty, it's an unsatisfactory situation to have a disclaimed audit opinion. So I think that's, as I say, that's going to be our challenge for the next few years to try and get out of that position. But it is a significant challenge because of the resource constraints within the profession and within finance teams to deal with that challenge. Happy to answer any questions anyone may have on the report.
No, thank you. I think, and you'll correct me, no doubt, if I'm wrong, but so obviously the 2023-24 disclaimed. I think you previously said the 24-25 will be disclaimed as well. And the plan, the recovery plan that you mentioned a couple of minutes ago was sort of so we get into a position where the 25-26 accounts hopefully will not be disclaimed, because obviously I guess I don't get, I mean, as members want our accounts to be open, transparent and properly audited, to give assurance not just to us but to the people that are paying the bills, i.e. the council taxpayers. So is that a fair summary?
I think it'll be a challenge to recover by 25-26.
Right.
And one of the problems we've got is there's not currently an agreed approach to addressing the missing assurances within the profession, within the audit profession. So we're working with the Financial Reporting Council, who are the regulators for audit work and accountancy work in the UK, and the National Audit Office, and all of the other firms working together to try and develop a solution to it, which avoids us having to just do the entire audit. And some of the firms are suggesting that is the only solution. That's not an achievable solution because the resource doesn't exist to do the additional years of audit. So that's one of the challenges. We don't actually have an approach to take yet, which means that it's hard for us to start doing the work because there's a risk to just waste time. So at the moment, it's hard even to estimate when we can get back, when we can recover.
Thank you. Councillor Bell.
You may have already answered my question, but I'm not an accountant, right? So my simplistic view is this, that we haven't had the audited accounts for reasons that we all know over a few years, which means we haven't got an audited opening balance. I mean, not the right terms, but yeah. So I have no idea how we ever get that, because we'll never have an opening balance that we might agree on it, but it's not an audited one. So how is it possible then to have accounts that are assured in any time in the future? Is that what you've just been discussing? Because what are the options for that? I have no idea how that can be overcome.
Sure, yeah. This is exactly the issue
That's what
we're trying to address. But so the opening balance for next year will be the balances that we've audited this year.
But you didn't have an opening balance for this year.
We didn't have an opening balance for this year. So as we move forward and complete the audits, then we're building up some assurance around the opening balances, at least in the top half of the balance sheet.
Yeah.
The thing we're lacking then is the build-up of the reserves, because you have usable reserves and unusable reserves, and it's important to understand how they're made up. And without having audited the previous year's accounts, which the transactions flow into those reserves, then we're never going to have assurance on that, on the reserves position. So that's the challenge. We're trying to work out how can we get that assurance, at least so that we have sufficient assurance that we know they're not materially incorrect. They don't need to be precise, they need to be absolutely perfect, they need to be materially accurate. And how can we do that without having to do the entire audit? That's what we're working on right now. Yeah.
And I mean, I am completely ignorant on this, but reserves, don't we just look in a bank account somewhere and see how much money's in there? I mean, is it that simple?
No.
Because it's there or it's not there. Isn't it?
It's not a cash.
So, okay.
It's the accumulated,
Well, it just seems so simple.
it's effectively the accumulated surpluses from previous years, which build up in
Yeah, I
in
understand
reserves at the
that.
bottom of
There
the.
must be some. Yeah.
So they're made up of all of your assets and all your liabilities, which cash is one of those.
Okay,
But-
I'll give up.
It's, I mean, you've been in business, Margaret, so it's your accumulated profits,
Yeah, but
You know,
that, for me, that's cash. I only live on cash. I don't bother with all this stuff.
or it's represented by, yeah, but. Councillor Wackles.
Thank you. I'm not an accountant either, but I was just going to ask, do we run a risk the longer we leave it, and I understand why you have to, of it becoming more complicated and more of a job? Is that, am I guessing that right? Thank you.
You are, absolutely. The longer it goes on, the more complicated it gets, yeah. So we need to try and get on top of it as soon as we can.
Simplistically, there needs to be a point in time where a line is drawn in the sand to say, this is it, and then we need to. But it's as Chris said, you know, it's how or who draws that line in the sand, isn't it, really? And that, you know, but you're absolutely right. The longer it goes, the more, you know, the longer it's going to take to draw that line. But Councillor Simpson, I think did you?
Thank you, Chair. Generally, I understand that this is an issue that's been ongoing for some time, and clearly I'm not wishing to shoot the messenger, especially if you've been gracious enough to come and talk to us about it. So thank you for that. I am equally somewhat assured by comments over materiality that it is broadly the right number, but we don't know if it's slightly up or down. But that does take me on a little bit further, I think, from Councillor Wackles' question. I'd like to better understand the risk of that, the risk to the authority and the risk to us as members, because there must be a risk somewhere of this being incorrect. And to the extent in terms of personal liability, not that that's the biggest issue here, but how is that personal liability for members protected and the liability for the authority within our insurance program?
There's a question for an auditor.
Yeah, and I'm going to have to pass that one into the row in front of me because, yeah, that's not really an issue for the auditor.
And on the second part, for sure, but what are the risks to the authority from a misstatement of the account? Or other, not if you are probably going to get it wrong, but a series, or was it now 3 or 4 years disclaimed accounts? What's the risk?
So this will be the third year of disclaiming. So the risk.
And you're forecasting more.
Yes, next year, so there will be at least four. So the risk is that the accounts, you're not getting assurance on the accuracy of your accounts because of those disclaimers. So the risk is the accounts are actually not accurate. Now, they're prepared by a professional finance team, so you have a level of assurance around the accuracy of those accounts, but you don't have independent assurance from auditors that they're accurate. So that's the risk that you're taking. And obviously there have been some changes in the finance team. So Alison would answer that question and have some comment to make on that, I'd imagine. But yeah, from our perspective, that's the level of risk.
And just as a supplementary for, I'm aware that the level of materiality ordinarily is £1 million.
Yeah.
So given that, how much of an additional risk is it? Because if we're already saying that they're broadly right, the level of materiality in audit is about £1 million. Is that really, in your view, much more risk than what we were already taking, given the level of materiality on audit?
Yeah, so you're right. So that, yeah, just under £1 million is materiality. But what we're saying here is we haven't been able to do the audit. So we're not even able to give you assurance to within £1 million that your accounts are correct. Because we just haven't been able to check the opening balances to allow us to get assurance on the 23-24 position. So the risk is that the accounts could be more than £1 million misstated. But yeah, that's an important issue that you consider, and you need to make a judgment on the risk around that. How confident are you about the financial position, because all of the financial reports you receive throughout the year are based on the same information. So if it is inaccurate, then that means your financial reporting is inaccurate as well.
So in the risk management sense, it's a very low likelihood, potentially a significant or severe potential.
That's probably a good way to put it, yes.
Councillor Watkins.
Thanks, Jim. Sorry, my question's directed to Alison and Nigel, if that's okay. Knowing that, well, we knew, didn't we, that we were unable to audit with external audits. Did you feel that you needed to put any internal measures in to sort of safeguard even further your checks and balances, which I'm sure were satisfactory in the first place? But did you feel that, or did you feel and did you do therefore any extra layers just to sort of reassure us here tonight and members of the public? Thank you.
So through you, Chair, what we did was we got the arrangement in with FCMA, the internal auditors, to come in and do, because we were under resourced from an internal audit point of view. I think that I guess made it a higher risk because we weren't doing enough internal audit and we were behind the external audit. So we've got a quite a comprehensive internal audit plan now in place, and we've made sure that there were audits on there looking at the financial controls, looking at our governance arrangements, looking at our risk management, so all those key sort of things that you would look at. So we've had really up to date audits of that with action plans. So I guess, I mean, this is unprecedented, the situation we're all in. Not that it's that much comfort, but that, you know, there's loads of authorities across the whole country. It's not just us. And to be honest, it's not a great situation to be in, but and there are risks with it, but we'll manage it as much as we can by doing more internal auditing and making sure that we've got those controls in place. We do budget monitoring, we send financial reports, so we do all of that. We're mitigating the risks as much as we can, but you know, not having an external audit is a risk.
Thank you. That was the reassurance, I think, you know, from, as I said, I'm not an accountant, but clearly here to represent the residents, and just for that assurance really that, you know, you are doing what you can in the circumstances. Thank you.
Councillor Simpson.
Could I have the response to the second part of my question, Chair?
From Alison.
So
Or whoever is appropriate.
yeah, so part of what I said in terms of the internal audit control, we've ran that. The reports come through to Resources Board every meeting now in terms of audit process. So we're on that. The action plan is being monitored, so all the actions are being delivered. So we are, as I said, we've done as much as we can to mitigate the risks, you know, things that are in our control. But you know, that I can't say that there's not a risk with not having external audit, because there is. I don't know what the government are going to do. You know, as our external auditors said, they haven't made a decision yet on how we're going to manage the situation we're in. So we're working through that.
But just to refine that, Chair, what I'm trying to understand is there a quantified exposure? Because normally when we go through the financial papers, there's the identification of risk. Have we done that? I'm sorry, I haven't seen it. Have we done that? And secondly, what is the risk on personal liability for members, and how is that addressed by our insurance?
I don't think there is a personal risk to members, but I guess I would have to check that, but I don't think there is. We haven't quantified the risk because I don't think we can really quantify the risk.
I thought there was a clear risk on individuals if we are not going through, you know, if our virus has a right, it comes back to the people that sign it, which, aside from you, Chairman, is, I think, pretty much all the members of the resource group.
Chairman, the position usually on councillor liability is that if you're working within the confines of the council's procedures, then you're fine. These unprecedented, as Alison says, situations, I don't think qualify as you as individual members going off and doing something outside of that at all. So whilst there may be something for the local authority, that would be very, very surprising if that touched on anybody individually out there as officers.
That is assuring, But as all other things like this in my professional life, I'd appreciate that in writing, and I think that should go to all members. Because if the assurance is good, then we should write it down and
Happy to,
Write down
that
the
has limits. But if I'm wrong, then it's my responsibility because I've given you the wrong advice. So there you go. That's a nice switcheroo, wasn't it?
but members of other authorities, for various reasons, have been taken to court and have had to deliver their assets. I think absolutely that's where they have clearly done something wrong. They're clearly doing something wrong and tolerating something which may be wrong and not quantifying it is where I am unclear as to the liability.
I think to be fair, that's in, as you say, it's certainly way active and lawful. I would go so far as to say that the chances of individual surcharge in this case is vanishingly small because you're operating within the system conditions that are applying across the country, which is, I mean, that's what the heck's going on in Albany. And we're doing everything we possibly can within law. In fact, the government has made up a new law or certainly new guidance to deal with this scenario, and we're following that. So yeah, I would upgrade that to vanishingly small or whatever form of assurance you want higher than that.
So the form of assurance I'm hoping to get is that in the past I understood there was within our corporate insurance program some elements of indemnification for members. Is that still there? And could that be shared with members as to what we are indemnified for and the financial limit?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Simmons.
Sorry, I was watching the screen. Also, in the internal control recommendations, obviously there's this 10 points range. If you're saying that you, just for a bit of clarification for me really, if we're saying that they haven't been able to conduct the audit, have they sort of been able to conduct enough to get these points, if you like? Because obviously there's 10 points there of recommendations. The one I was going to pull out was about, obviously we talked about risk management quite a bit, so it just said record of digital and electronic information assets in terms of, making sure our fixed asset register includes those. I was a bit confused about that. What would you expect to see there that isn't?
So on the first question, yes, these recommendations reflect some of the work that we have completed. Specifically on that, and help me with which point
I think it's the fifth one in the list. Page 27.
Yeah, it's appendix 1.
Appendix 1.
Our IT team would expect to see a record of information systems and some kind of a risk assessment around those. And yeah, that's really all we're saying. So it's a digital asset register as opposed to a physical asset register.
Anybody got any more questions? Once again, thank you to our auditors for not just turning up, but actually being here face to face. So that was one of our, I think we probably mentioned it before, that was one of our big criticisms of our previous auditors because they chose not to attend face to face. So thank you. It's very much appreciated. And I'm glad we had some more questions for you this evening because last time you came, I did feel somewhat guilty that you had made the effort to come and nothing happened really. So it is very much appreciated, you've been here, so thank you once again. You are more than welcome, to stay for the rest of the meeting, if you would like, but don't feel obliged.
We might take a chance just to get back to the ranch. I've got a file, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Excuse me. I need to move the recommendation. I guess. The narrative. Just trying to find the slide. So I'll move the recommendation. I'll move the recommendation from the chair. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Ridley, thank you. All those in favour? And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Item number 9 is the Warwickshire, Coventry and Solihull Local Authorities Natural Capital Investment Strategy. This report seeks member approval for the what I just said, the strategy that I just said. This document sets the high-level strategy for how money generated through the planning system, such as biodiversity net gain, will be used to enhance the natural environment in the borough and across the sub-region. The report also sets out the approach to the governance of this process with the creation of a board, and members are asked to nominate this council's representative. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you. Could you, I have read the report. Probably been quite thick today. How does this affect us financially? Because I know biodiversity net gain isn't necessarily coming for us, but what is the net financial effect of this, either to the authority or to our area?
That is a good question, Councillor Simpson, which I cannot answer right at this moment. So I'm going to look at Alison.
Yeah.
Or Mike.
Chair, I'll try and attempt to answer it. It's difficult at this stage to assess the net financial implications, because until we have a clear portfolio of sites to which we can direct biodiversity net gain credits, and that can be managed on that basis, that are within the borough, of course, and we don't yet have an agreed list of portfolios. That's quite difficult. We do, however, have the potential benefit for some net gain in that the county council currently hold a significant amount of contribution from previous Section 106 agreements. I haven't got the exact details, and I don't know whether that's confidential or not, because it covers a wider area than North Warwickshire in terms of the other boroughs and districts within the county. However, my understanding is that that is going to be part and parcel of the finance that we will have to direct to relative sites. Obviously, those will not all necessarily be within the borough, and they will be throughout the county as a whole. But the borough does have a significant number of county-owned sites within its current boundary. So, subject to obviously a member viewing those opportunities through the board to be established, and myself through the technical advisory group, I would hope we would see some specific and significant net gain to the borough in terms of the improvement to natural capital.
That was helpful, but I'm not sure I'm any more assured than I was before. What I'm trying to get to is, will there be a net outflow? Because I think we have a whole bunch of sites within our borough that could benefit by this, and I would be quite wary, as I'm sure members of other authorities in this group would be, to see it dissipating. Now, there are areas that I think significantly need this cash in North Warwickshire. How will we be able to assess whether we have gained or lost, or as I anticipate, it's been Stephen Stevens for us, it's just a better system of dealing with it. It's a better system of dealing with cash, so who would object? If it's exporting the cash to neighbouring authorities, then I do have concerns about it.
Chair, that isn't the intention through the BNG process, or obviously the previous Section 116 process, that would happen. There's a specific, effectively a sequential test where initial work has to be done on site. If not, then on site, and it has to be delivered through credits, through adjoining sites, sites within the parish, site within the borough. That's directly part of the strategy to make sure that the impacts generated by the development are focused on the borough to which the impact relates. That's the intention. Now, clearly there may be occasions where there's a wider strategic issue and there may be some cross-boundary issues because you have, for instance, in areas to the south of the borough, on the Cole and the Blythe Valley, where you have boundaries that cross. So you would have areas potentially there that may cross 2 or 3 authorities. We wouldn't be looking to, perhaps in your circumstances, to focus it solely within one authority if the natural environment that you're directing it towards crosses those boundaries. But the intention is to try as much as possible, because obviously at this stage I can't give any more guarantees, to direct the contributions towards the area within which the impact is caused.
Just a final question, Chairman, because I think there was another question. What's the alternative if we don't do this?
Chair, the alternative, my understanding is we would have to finance both the operations of the BNG systems ourselves, and that would involve a serious level of investment in terms of staffing, ecologists and such like, or moving to a private sector version of doing the BNG assessments and paying it through the private sector fund, where we believe we probably would not get the same level of involvement, the same level of agreement, and the same level of management of those assets. The difficulty at the moment is the market, without being too rude, is a bit like the start of the initial carbon trading market. It's a bit of a free-for-all, a bit of a cowboy market. So we want to be in there quickly to establish our own market control and provide a portfolio and a market that the developers within the borough and that are impacting on the borough have an opportunity to come direct to us so that we control where those BNG fundings go. There is a real issue with this where if you do get a private sector company operating a different opportunity or portfolio of sites, that they will not necessarily be within the borough. That is a real concern, and I'm encouraging at the moment through the course of the site we will be undertaking this year, but seeking public bodies, obviously the county have already got their site. We're looking at the opportunity for our sites to deliver on BNG and to benefit from the opportunity of BNG, but also parish councils and other private individuals or charitable bodies. In this case, I'm thinking Warwickshire Wildlife Trust as a good example, to put their sites forward so that we have the maximum opportunity to focus those benefits in the boroughs to which they're impacting. Without that, we will struggle. And that is one of the main concerns and the reason for trying to set up this strategy and this plan and this body to effectively oversee the management of those funds.
So Chairman, I get that it's not like a zero sum. As a status quo, we get, if you will, crudely, less than the total benefit because there's admin and everything else. So therefore, I think this is a method of saying that we equalise those across the authorities and we end up with an overall improved position. That I can see is advantageous. Could I then just be assured over timescale? Is this a recommendation to this board and therefore a resolution, or does it become a resolution to a recommendation to the council? And what would the time scale be for rolling this out?
My understanding is its recommendation to the executive board, and then over the next 12 to 18 months will be the establishment of the actual natural capital investment plan. And that is where the involvement with the relevant board member will be. And then the overseeing the management of that plan and the delivery of the sites that come forward within the period after that. Effectively, the difficulty we do face, obviously, is that the BNG system gives a 30-year timeframe with which we will have to manage this. So that is the timeframe we are facing at the moment. We see this as the best way to manage and address that issue.
This is purely personal. Well, I'm getting old and increasingly thick. When I first joined the authority, recommendations such as this always had a line at the bottom which said recommendation required or resolution required. That enabled me then to clearly understand, are we making a final decision or is it going to full council? I think that would be really helpful if we could. I'm sure, I am positive all other members of the board thoroughly understand the constitution and know whether they are voting on something which is then resolved here or not. I'm not that clever.
Chairman Mayor, so where the recommendation says, or whether after the summary it says recommendation to executive board, that would be a resolved item for this board. If it's not going to be a resolved item, it will say recommendation to council, and very rarely it will say recommendation to the board. So occasionally things that come to resources or senior board have to come here and go council as well. So the bit in the box at the front underneath the summary will tell you that that's the recommendation to the executive board, in which case that's a resolution.
Thank you.
Just one final point, Chair, as well, and just to confirm to Councillor Simpson, the point about the slightly less than zero sum is correct, because this will involve basically some payments towards whether it be ecologists, whether it be the individual site assessments, and the day-to-day bureaucracy and management of that process. Yes, that will be part and parcel of what those funds have to cover. Partly that's why, if you look at the strategy, it's looking for as wide an opportunity to access funds, whether that be for woodland planting and similar, carbon trading and similar, and set up the carbon trading system within the borough, within the county, sorry. So it is looking at that issue to try and get across the board access to as many routes of funding to help address that issue. And then the management will be addressing all that wide area, not simply BNG in the section 6, but much wider areas of community and wellbeing opportunities as well.
Thank you. Councillor Wattles.
Thanks, Chair. I was fortunate enough to go to the WELC AGM not long ago, and I've just been racking through my emails to try and get the gentleman's name. There was an ecologist in Warwick, somebody may know his name, and he spoke, he had us all mesmerised talking about this. And I'm just wondering if it would be worth potentially inviting him just so that councillors can get an understanding of what this, this means to us, because it was quite useful. Just a thought. I don't know if anyone knows his name off the top of my head. I can have a look back and try and find it, but obviously not tonight.
Yeah, Councillor, we believe it's probably David Lowe, and we've attended the recent strategy conference down in Solihull just before Christmas. That was partly reflecting that, and he did indicate that he's more than keen, and also Chris Bowden, who will be the effectively manager of this process, to come and chat with you, and I'll contact him on our and ask you to see if we can arrange something.
Good, thank you. Councillor Ridley.
Thank you. Can I just ask, Mike, through the chair, if the 106 monies, say we've got the developments and we've obviously got an increase in housing that are going to be delivered in the next few years, would the 106 then go directly to this strategy, to this organisation, and then things are delivered from there as per you have a portfolio for areas that are going to be delivered, and for a wood up like the Queen Elizabeth woodland that we want to plan. So would it be 106 money as well as perhaps funding from the council itself?
Chair, yes, Councillor, it wouldn't be that clear cut. It would depend on the individual section 106 agreement. The section 106 agreement is slightly outside of this process. It's additional to, but it is slightly outside. So if there's a specific requirement or there's a specific section 106 that focuses on a particular issue for that borough, then that will be addressed through that section 106, and that can include financial contributions. The BNG area, which is the more regulatory side, and where we are contracted out with the county council to provide us with that service. So we have county council ecologists who do the analysis and the assessment on individual planning applications at the validation stage, assessing the likely impact and value, assessing the application by the developer into what he's suggested and what perhaps should be the accurate figure. From there, going through the spreadsheets, they will then direct that funding towards this approach to help deliver and address that. But section 106 will still be there and effectively could be in a standalone situation.
Okay, there is a recommendation D is to appoint a member to the board. Councillor Simpson, I think you talked yourself into it, but what I was going to say, it should be, in my opinion anyway, I hope members will agree, it should be ex officio, so it should be the chair of planning, I would have thought, represents us on this.
Or the chair of the board, yeah.
Or, yeah, but seeing as you're here and I think probably possibly.
Chairman, I'd be happy.
Thank you. So with that as member as changed to chair of planning, I'll move the recommendation from the chair, seconded by Councillor Riley. All those in favour? And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Item number 10 is the local government standards system. The government is consulting on the changes to the local government standard system. The main change involves the reintroduction of periods of suspension and disqualification for the most serious behaviours. The government has asked for responses from members and also from statutory officers, particularly monitoring officers. The views of our monitoring officer and chief exec are set out in the report, and members are asked to either endorse or provide additional points that can be fed back to the government. Councillor Bell.
If this was, this is a reintroduction of this, why was it stopped before? Did it work okay? What were the reasons? What was the logic? I mean, I don't remember that, but for taking suspensions out of possible sanctions.
Good point.
Yes, I think there was a view expressed that it was used at too low a level. And also there was something called the Standards Board for England, which was quote unquote an unelected quango. If I can channel my inner Eric Pickles. And so I think it was I think the reintroduction of it as a sanction for local members on local standards committees with then a right of appeal to unrelated quangos. That seems to be a little bit better fit rather than the other way around. I think those were the main points when it was watered down or changed.
How long ago was it changed?
2011, I think.
Yeah.
2011, 2012, something like that.
Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Chairman. I think some of the things in here, the public would expect are happening already. So, you know, where there is a complaint, and particularly one of serious misconduct, that members' allowances are not automatically suspended. It just seems unreasonable that if there is, I mean, okay, I absolutely get the point of, and support, you know, you were innocent until proven guilty. But that doesn't say the attendance officer can't be paid if the complaint is found to be not upheld. But I do think there are things in here which actually are pretty reasonable and are what we would expect. But my area of concern perhaps is the suggestion that the investigations continue after a member has resigned. He's no longer a member of the authority. And that's not to say, I think people are, if you will, get off with it if they resign. It's more the practicality of doing that, because the opportunity to secure cooperation with any agreement must be inevitably be less. But that, you know, I can see both sides of it, and I do think, by and large, this is welcome.
Judge, on that point, the law ordinarily allows us to do that in the current circumstances. It's not every case, and we have done on one occasion ourselves, which members may not recall. And I think the justification is that if somebody resigns in the face of a accusation, sort of retreats for a few years and then comes back and says, I've got an entirely blameless record, that might in some circumstances not be entirely accurate and transparent. And so that those circumstances, the law currently allows councils to continue to reach a conclusion so that that point can't be made. But it's quite rare.
Okay, everybody happy with the recommendation? I'll move that from the chair then. Second by Councillor Simmons. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. Item number 11 is the data protection policies and procedures. This report seeks member approval for a number of policies and procedures relating to data protection and follows a review of this area by the Council Head of Legal Services. And just to reassure members of the council, coat of arms will appear on the policies rather than the word crest as it currently appears. Any comments, questions, queries? We'll move that from, Councillor.
Well, I think it is covered by it, but I was surprised that the kind of phrase of right to be forgotten wasn't in there. There is some stuff around people's right to have the data erased, but I would have expected that term to have been in there in particular, really. And the other thing was, it's not specifically about the policy, but it'd be nice to have some kind of measure of how many subject access requests we get, how many right to be forgotten requests we get, and how long it takes to process them on average.
Okay, yeah.
Through you, Chair. Hopefully in the future there'll be a Power BI report which will be brought to board. It will set out subject access requests, FOIs, how long we take with them, what department receives the most. So there'll be certain categories in that. I'm yet to get onto that. So there will be in the future that we will sort that.
I think, Chair, we're happy to add the right to the phrase right to be forgotten alongside that bit where it says about arranging. Thank you.
Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, James. Just a quick question. As I was going through the report, I can see there are specific identified employee responsibilities. I think in the past we had an identified section on member responsibilities as well. Is that still the case? I haven't read the full document. I was just going through the report.
I can certainly add that in. Or if it's not already in there.
Thank you. I'm grateful because I do think as people who are given a laptop or iPad or whatever it is, I don't know, I turn the damn thing on, I don't know what it actually does. But I think there are obligations on members to broadly agree to the same obligations and the same responsibilities as to employees. And if anything, I think we should be holding ourselves to a higher test, if that's reasonable. So I'd just like us to be clear on that. You know, and I think members really ought to be committing to use the council's equipment for only council business rather than anything else.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Okay, I'll move that from the chair then, seconded by Councillor Barr. Thank you. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you. Item number 12 is the proposed 3-year capital programme for 2025-26 to 2027-28. Board provides the details of the revised capital programme for the current financial year and recommends to the council the programme for the next 3 years. Part of the council's overall budget to be considered by full council on the 19th. Any comments? I'll move it from the chair then, seconded by Councillor Simmons. All those in favour? And abstention? Item number 13 is the general fund revenue budget. That's also the forecast. Provides details of the outturn forecast for the current year for the budgets directly controlled by this board, together with the estimates for those budgets for the next financial year, as well as for 2026-27 and 2027-28. Comments? Moved by Councillor Simmons, seconded by, I'll second it. All those in favour? Thank you. And abstentions? 4. Thank you. Item 14, the general fund revenue estimate summary, 2024-25 outturn and tax set 2025-26. Same again. I'll move it from the chair, seconded by Councillor Simmons. All those in favour? And 4 abstentions, presume. Yeah, 4 abstentions. Thank you. Okay, item number 15 is the exclusion of the public and press. Going to read it out.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Phillips. I'll move that seconded by thank you. So we are now in private